and my head is on a swivel, and I'm looking for that player. I kid you not. And I find that player, I make a straight beeline for that player, and I blow him back about 7 yards. So now, I kid you guys not. And you want to look at this, I think it happened in the third quarter. I could have easily maybe came and kept my angle of running diagonally, maybe got a few more yards, not saying I was going to score, but I found that player, and I made a straight beeline for him.
The bye week is over. We are back, and welcome to The Script, a podcast on the Ohio State Buckeyes. His real name is Cardale Jones. His nickname is Beanie Wells. I'm Dave Holmes. Full show today. We are jacked up for this one, talking Jeremiah Smith and his comments about that team up north, plus the one position that might be very difficult for the Buckeyes to replace in 2025. And we're going to talk a little NFL, Browns, and Bengals. But we begin with Jeremiah Smith, guys. Let me make sure I get it right. So I'm going to pull the script out here on The Script and read this to you. All right, Jeremiah Smith's comments to The Athletic on Michigan. Quote, "I'm not a sore loser, but I hate losing. And losing to that team up north was pretty crazy. In the end, I think it really helped us play the way we did in the playoffs, but I didn't want to go to Ohio State and lose to that team up north. I just hate them. Just something about them. For the next 2 years, I promise you, we will not lose to them. I can't lose to them in the next 2 years." My first reaction is, 2 years, Jeremiah? You got 3 years of eligibility. What, we leaving early? Okay, so throw that to the side. All right, so I'm going to get your guys' take on how Urban and Tressel would have thought about this in a minute. But first, personally, Beanie, your thoughts when you hear Jeremiah, air quotes, almost guarantee he's beat Michigan.
I love it.
Okay.
I love every bit of it. You know, for so long, you know, as an alum, and I think, Cardale, you may have heard this too, we had conversations with fellow of our former players that we all played with, and there was a thought that these guys don't understand the importance of the rivalry. There's not enough Ohio guys on this roster to where they get it. And they see a guy that's, one, not from the state of Ohio, but understand it from a different perspective. I love it. And come out and double down and say, you know what, the next 2 years, it ain't happening. We ain't losing. I love that thought process. I know a lot of people are going to sit there and say, well, why put that bulletin board material out there? Who cares about this game in terms of bulletin board material being put out there? Who cares? It's out the window. Go out and let them know right now how much you hate them. And I love it coming from our star player.
All right, Cardale, your thoughts.
You know what? I don't have a problem with his comments at all. I know coaches used to always tell us, hey, don't give the media bulletin board material. But at this point, this is not a guy who hasn't played at an extremely high level. This is not some backup, or this is not some incoming freshman like Bryce Underwood saying, hey, what we're going to do to Ohio State. Well, you never played in that game, so you really don't comprehend the level of intensity it's going to take and it's going to be in that game. That's going to be different from the first 11 weeks of the season. But Jeremiah Smith, he understands it, right? He has unfortunately been on the losing end of that thing. You look at some of the great receivers in Ohio State history the last couple of years who haven't left plummets with a pair of gold pants and made some great quarterbacks as well. And he don't want to put himself in that position outside of ultimately still winning the national championship this past year. He's still talking about that one of two slip-ups that really stings. And you can tell from the way that the emotions came out through those comments. And if people know Jeremiah Smith, he's a quiet kid. So I was more shocked that he said something like this versus what he actually said.
Yeah, so two things you said that stand out to me. All right, the first one, what you just referenced about the kind of kid Jeremiah Smith is, because he doesn't puff his chest out too often like this. So for him to do it tells you just how much of the loss bothered him. And then his status as a player, and I'm talking athleticism and skill-wise, you said he can talk this more than other guys. Right? I remember, it's been 7-8 years ago now, when Ohio State went to Oklahoma and their backup quarterback made a comment about, Ohio State's got this basic defense and it fired at the silver bullets up. When you're the backup quarterback and you talk trash, that's a bad thing. When you're the most talented player in college football, I tend to listen a little bit more. And Beanie, the one thing you said also kind of rang true with me. There's no such thing really as bulletin board in this game, because this is not like getting some underdog Purdue team hyped up. As if this team's not fired up enough after losing 4 in a row, as if Michigan doesn't hate Ohio State in the first place. So for me, I'm on board with what Beanie's saying here, that bulletin board almost doesn't matter in this game because you don't need any extra juice.
No, you don't at all. I mean, just the mere fact that, you know, the rivalry stems back to all of these years, and, you know, you're coming off of, you know, what, a trio of, well, not a trio, quadruple four. I mean, you always throw that in my face a little bit more, Dave.
He doesn't count. He doesn't count the sign stealing.
Right.
One.
But nonetheless, I mean, coming off that, I mean, who cares what's being said? You want to go out and you want to dominate. And I love that the best player, is going out and saying, you know what, this is what it's going to take. This is what we're going to do. And that's going to be it.
Yeah, and your best players always got to be your hardest workers. And, and I don't mind when your best players are making comments like this, because usually they're backing those type of comments up. And he has the ability to do so. He is the only thing that I have, I wouldn't say a problem with, that I would poke with the comment, is that sometimes a receiver can be minimized in a game plan.
Yeah.
Right. So his impact could be a little less than really having a huge impact on the success of the game. Because I can just double team you. Maybe I can even put 3 guys on you. You look at what Texas did, even though they put a lot of attention on him, and Ohio State was able to win in other ways, but still his presence was felt. He's that type of player, so I have no problem with those comments from him.
Okay, we have 2 players from 2 generations here. All right, Beanie played for Jim Tressel. Cardale played for Urban Meyer. So, Beanie, if you said something like this with Tressel as your head coach, what would the reaction have been?
You know what? One thing that people necessarily don't know about Coach Tress is a big-time guy in terms of you puffing your chest out and you feeling whatever it is that you say, you being and standing on that. That's Jim Tressel to a T. Now, he doesn't necessarily come out.
He puffed that sweater vest out. He puffed it out.
He very well would. I mean, I've had some conversations with Coach Tress, and he said some things that made me go, wow. I effing love it. So, if I was a player on that team and I came out and said this, what would Tress say to me? He'd probably say, you better back it up. That would be it. But he would not be upset. I know a lot of people would look at him as the senator. Or the lieutenant governor, so to speak, at this point in time. And he's always politically correct. But when it comes to this game, and when it comes to, you feeling yourself and having that confidence in your ability in a matchup, I don't think he would be one of those coaches that go ahead and say, oh, shut your mouth, you can't say this, that, and the third. But especially in this game, I think he would say, kudos, just go out there and do what you do and ball.
You can make a case that no one hates Michigan more than Urban Meyer. I mean, it's a psychotic level of hatred, Cardale. So what would Urban think about something like this?
I think in this game, come from one of his best players, I think he'd be all for it. And I think he'd back him up to a T. And I think this is the promise 2.0. You look back at 2008 with Tim Tebow coming off a loss to Ole Miss when Coach Meyer was that coach. And he shared the story with us where he had a guy, starting quarterback, go up there in front of the media, and he didn't answer a question. He made a statement and walked off. And that guy went about his business. I mean, a guy that was already going about his business at a very extremely high level, and to see it go to another level and do the things they ended up, I think they beat Cincinnati, my guy Tony Pike, back in the Sugar Bowl, I think, the end of the season, because, that was the BCS era, so one loss pretty much cost you the season, right? So I think it would have been a very similar approach if Coach Meyer was coaching his team and had Jeremiah Smith made these comments.
Okay, so the whole concept of bulletin board material is fascinating to me as someone who didn't play. We love to talk about it as if the team is going to take it to another level. But guys, I mean, 4 to 6, A to B, as Urban used to say, if we're talking going 100% on every play, Beanie, how much does it actually matter once the first ball is kicked off?
I think it does matter. Okay. I think in certain situations, there can be times where things are said that get under your skin as a player individually and a team. So I think it matters. It can be that motivating factor that make you want to go out and just smash somebody's face in, like Marshawn Lynch said, over and over and over again, based off of the things that they were saying. I mean, just think of it. I mean, you had the bully in high school, right? I mean, not to say you were bullied, but you knew the bully in high school, right?
Let's not go over my resume and how many
let's not bring up some let's not reopen some wounds there for Dave.
Look, man,
I'm sorry for opening wounds.
I spent a few study halls inside of a locker, if that's what you're implying, but now I got 2 big friends here that they can protect me. That's why
Never
I got
happen again.
No, all right, Cardale, moving on before I go back into therapy. Your thoughts on how much bulletin board matters?
I mean, it matters because I remember putting myself in those shoes where we got ready and played Alabama, and they made some comments with players through social media, basically saying this was just a scrimmage for them because of the quarterback, for the national championship game and one in particular player. And I remember vaguely where I think it was 3rd and long. I end up scrambling, and I'm in an open field, and my head is on a swivel, and I'm looking for that player. I kid you not. And I find that player, I make a straight beeline for that player, and I blow him back about 70 yards. So now, I kid you guys not. If you want to look at this, I think it happened in the 3rd quarter. I could have easily maybe came and kept my angle of running diagonally, maybe got a few more yards. Not saying I was a score, but I found that player, and I made a straight beeline for him.
You chose violence.
I chose violence. And what I said to that player as I was getting up off of top of him, no diddy, it was very inspired by the comments he made leading up to the game.
I love that story. All right, so we know Jeremiah Smith was the true breakout player of the 2024 Buckeyes as a true freshman. Incredible. Who's going to be the Buckeye who breaks out in 2025? So, Beanie, if we're looking at a player on this team, who is someone who you think may not be a huge name now, but is headed that way?
I think, when we look at the receiving core for Ohio State, we would say that's probably one of our strong suits on this football team. There's a guy, Brandon Ennis, that, we saw glimpses of last year. Just couldn't see him get on the field a whole lot because of the talent that we had and the way that our offense ran. But I think he's going to be our breakout star on the offensive end this year. Brandon Ennis, I can see him being in that slot. You can put him outside. This guy can take the top off a defense very fast. We saw him in kick return situations last year as well. I think he's going to be the guy that a lot of people are going to be talking about in the college football world.
Yeah, it's fascinating because sometimes that third guy in Ohio State is forgotten and they can break out. I think a couple years ago when you had Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave, and all of a sudden Jackson Smith and Jigma was just running free in the middle of the field. So a lot of attention going to go to Carnell Tape, Jeremiah Smith. I like that shout out for Brandon Ennis. Cardale, who do you got?
I got Malik Hartford on the defense side of the ball, safety, a guy who came to Ohio State, probably was expected to start last year, not knowing that Caleb Downs was going to transfer here, being back there potentially with Latham Ransom going into his second year, but a guy who was very sought out in the transfer portal for the past 2 years, actually, a guy who stuck around in this program and really had a chance to learn and develop with two really good safeties, one a two-time All-America, and now have potentially going to be back there and taking over the starting role because you look at his limited abilities, his limited playing ability that he had this past year. I think he started versus Michigan State. I think he started versus Youngstown State as well and did some great things overall this past year in the special teams. Now going into a potential full-time starting role back there with a guy like Caleb Downs, I think he's poised for a breakout season.
So when I think of breakout players, you need two things, talent and opportunity. And for me, Edric Houston is the perfect mix of both of those. He came in as a 5-star defensive end, decides to move to the interior, big guy, but still fast enough to rush up the middle. And I look at Edric Houston last year, he got some meaningful snaps in big games on a very experienced D-line. And the opportunity is certainly there because they cleaned house on the D-line. I also like Caden Curry to maybe be a late bloomer because he's been waiting. He's a guy who could have transferred. He waited his turn. And I do want to ask you about that, Cardale, waiting your turn. I mean, a lot of guys nowadays just say, I'm going to the first opportunity I can get. I mean, what's it like as a guy, and I know you know better than most, to sit there and wait your turn?
It's not waiting. It's developing. It's a difference.
Love that.
No one is waiting their turn. I think if you as a player and you as a coach, we have a relationship where I can sit down and tell you, hey, yeah, you're good, but you may be just a step slower than the guy in front of you. Let me continue to develop you. And you as a player taking that in and believing in that coach that ultimately want what's best for you and they're going to continue to develop you to be that guy when you first, take those meaningful steps. The development is the key. You see a lot of guys who jumping from transfer portal to school and still having the same results.
Yeah.
That development really starts over, especially when you're talking about a system type of player, when you play in a position where it's a lot of learning. So now on defense line, that may be different. Go get the ball, right? You may have a few calls and things like that, but when you talk about these skill players, it's the development side of things versus, I should be playing because I was a 5-star, I was a 4-star out of high school.
I love that thought.
Yeah, I love that. That's one of my favorite things about doing the show is I come at it from the outside perspective, and then I love that player's perspective. It's a similar concept, but it's still so different in the way you're looking at it. And Beanie, you developed for 10 or 11 games, and you come in, is it the 1 versus 2, the game of the century?
Yeah.
So that's your breakout moment, is that Michigan game. So what's it like those first 3 or 4 months when you're thinking, I should be getting some reps, but at the same time, you're not getting out there as much as you want.
I think initially it's hard for a lot of these guys, and myself included, because when you're coming from high school, you're coming from being the guy out there on the football field, probably one of the top 2 or 3 best players on your football team. And now you get to a place like Ohio State, and you have to wait your turn because there is
no. You don't wait.
Develop.
There we go.
Right, you have to develop because there are other players out there that have been in the system, so they understand things from a different perspective. They know how to go out and be not necessarily a pro, but to be a college football athlete. They know what to expect, what the coaches expect. And I think there is an adjustment phase for kids coming from high school, and I think I had to go through that. I remember I had a fumbling issue. It was something I never did in high school, but I just ran carrying the ball all wild, and I had a couple of times where I fumbled in games, and Coach Tressel said, hey, if you're going to play here at Ohio State, you got to get this fixed. But fortunate enough, he stuck with me and gave me opportunities to develop and to get better and to understand what it meant to be a college football athlete. And I think, that goes a long way when you have that mentality that I want to get better, I want to learn, opposed to I just need to be out there right now because I'm, like Cardale said, a 4 or 5-star guy.
Yeah, so Beanie went from developing or waiting his turn to being a 2-time team MVP. And coming up next on The Script, we're going to look at that running back position. How do the Buckeyes replace 2 guys who went in the top 40 of the NFL draft? That's coming up next on The Script, a podcast on the Ohio State Buckeye. Welcome back to The Script, a podcast on the Ohio State Buckeyes. New episodes every Wednesday. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube, Apple Pod, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. I know, guys, the corporate bosses don't want me to admit this, but they launched 2 podcasts a little over a month ago, ours and Alabama's. And we're not about to let the Crimson Tide out-subscribe us. All right, so if you don't do it for us, do it for Buckeye Nation. Subscribe to us on YouTube. All right, so we had a new sponsor join the show last week. We're so excited to have Buckeye Basement Solutions on board with us. If you need basement waterproofing or fix, repair, they can do it all. And we thought, you know what we want to do is, since they're sponsoring, we want to come up with our own Buckeye solutions on this show. So what is the solution, guys, for replacing Travion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins, 2 guys who went early second round, top 38 picks? So I guess I'll start with Beanie, since you are my running back. Give me this Buckeye basement solution. How do we fix this hole at running back? Because replacing 1 guy, tough enough. 2 guys, big hole to fill.
And then 2 guys that went on to be second-round picks and that were very good. Both had over 1,000-yard seasons. Both could hit home runs and grind out those tough yards. That's going to be hard. It's not going to be easy task whatsoever. Obviously, bringing in CJ Donaldson from West Virginia, hoping that he can kind of be one of those power, hard-nosed running backs that grind out those tough yards in the situations that we've seen a couple of our guys do last year. But then on the flip side of that, we got some guys that have been waiting in the wings. James Peoples. We bring in Bo Jackson, who I believe is going to be a stud. He was almost borderline of being my breakout player. I know he's going to be a freshman this year, but I know Ryan Day and his staff, they aren't afraid to play freshmen, especially if you're good enough. So bringing in those guys, Bo Jackson, I think, is going to be that slasher that you can bring in to spell CJ Donaldson and James Peoples, but it's going to be a running back by committee. It isn't going to be a one-guy system that we can expect to go out there and have for 1,700 yards. I think those days are over at Ohio State, because you get in an abundance of talent at the position and you want to showcase all of these guys, but not even just showcase them. These are guys that can help us win in different situations.
Yeah, it's interesting because James Peoples is the only scholarship back returning from 2024, which is a wild turnover in one room. So it's going to be Peoples. It's going to be CJ Donaldson, as you mentioned, from West Virginia. We'll talk more Bo Jackson in a minute, Cardale. So your thought on the Peoples-Donaldson combo?
Well, yeah, I think we have the solution already. You having a pair and a spare, right? When you look at last year, they had that pair, the 2 guys that went second round in the NFL draft this past year. And then you had Peoples that was sprinkled in a lot, actually, when you came to certain situations. And now you're repeating that, you pretty much repeating that recipe, right? Bringing in a great veteran leadership from West Virginia with CJ, a guy that Peoples that got a lot of experience last year and was in a room with 2 great running back. So that experience alone, I think, is going to elevate him and put him in position where he's thinking completely different now, taking over a bigger role, like this running back by committee role. He would probably be the starting one that pretty much start the games. And then you look at a young, fresh, explosive, eager guy like Bo Jackson, and you sprinkle him in there in that equation of just giving him that experience as well, almost similar to a role that Peoples had last year. And you pretty much preparing for the following year, right? The following year now, potentially Peoples return. Bo Jackson got a little bit more experience under his belt. Favor Aki is coming right here out of Columbus at Delaware Hayes, is going to have an opportunity to be that Bo Jackson, who his role is going to be next year that Bo is playing this year. So I think the solution is already there with the recipe that Coach Locke is already developing in that room of having 2 guys that's going to be the workhorses and 1 guy that's ready to be developed to be one of those workhorses in the following years to come.
I like that. Pair and a spare. I like that. All right, so James Peoples is, like we said, probably the incumbent. I think the likeliest guy to lead the team in carries, if I had to predict. CJ Donaldson, if you don't know his stuff from West Virginia, he's a guy who got better all 3 years, all right? His final season at West Virginia, he was at 7.4 per carry. I know that's not always the metric that, the stat nerds love, yards per carry. Beanie can maybe touch on that. But 2,000 career yards, but also not a ton of tread on the tires, Beanie. And when we look at running backs now, it used to be everyone wants to be Derrick Henry and tote it 350 times a year. Financially, that might not be the best long-term
Right.
solution. So, I mean, you're a guy who took a lot of wear and tear your sophomore and junior season. What do you think about the old school mindset versus now when you think, I'm good with 150 carries?
I love the fact that now, teams are doing the running back by committee. So I would be good with 150 carries because I think it's about impact, what you do with the carries that you have. And, I think teams realize that if I got two guys, they can be fresher down the stretch. They can help us in different ways depending on the game plan that given week. I love it. And then for the players, I mean, when you look at it and break it all the way down, you're healthier for your career if this is what you want to do going to the next level. You don't have a lot of tread on your tire. You're not banged up and brutalized because I can tell you, after carrying the ball 30-some-odd times in a game in the Big Ten, it hurt. And it hurt for weeks, all the way up until, I was getting ready for the next game. So if you don't have to deal with that and you can still be impactful for a football team, I think that's the best course of action. And I think right now we're seeing that not just at Ohio State, but across the board in college football. Very few teams are going to have that sole bell cow back.
Yeah, the holy grail for NFL running backs is a second big contract. And we've seen a few guys get it. Zeke got paid. Todd Gurley got paid. I mean, some guys get that second contract. Most guys are not lucky enough to get paid twice at the NFL level. Cardale, the one underrated thing about this, and Bo Jackson, by the way, for people who aren't familiar, Bo Jackson, no relation. It gets confusing. He's a running back, not related to the Bo Jackson. He was also a star baseball player in high school. Two-sport, I think you ran track as well. Not that Bo Jackson. His dad is Lamar Jackson, not that Lamar Jackson. Little confusing. So, but the one thing about Bo Jackson getting on the field, Cardale, you're the quarterback, young guys, and pass protection. Take me through pass pro when it comes to getting on the football field.
So that's usually what keep guys off the football field when you're talking about not just at the running back position, but the quarterback position and offensive line as well, because it's a lot of more moving parts. You're coming from a system usually in high school where you're not obligated to do certain things consistently or as game plan specific, right? Pass protection is going to be your best friend when you're talking about trying to really solidify your spot on a team and really trying to differentiate yourself from the other guys in the room, because it is a lot of moving parts. But you want your guy to be locked in, and that's why I continue to say that Ezekiel Elliott was the best player I ever played with, because how he played without the ball in his hands. He was so smart. He was so quick. He was so instinctive, especially in pass protection. And even in the run game, when you had some quarterback rounds when he was leading blocking for you. So those are the type of things that's going to catch the eye of a coach, especially from a young player, because you're not going to see these type of things that they're doing at the high school level. There's no way you're going to watch the high school tape and say, oh, this running back is a great pass protector. It just don't happen like that.
One thing real quick, I want to go back to you talk about Ezekiel Elliott being one of the best players. One thing I love that Urban Meyer did that we don't see a lot of the times with coaches, all his stars to be on his team all started off playing special teams.
Special teams. He loved
Zeke Elliott, Michael Thomas, the list goes on and on and on. Special teams, and this is for all you coaches out there or people listening, special teams players are bred a little bit different. Now, they're going to be your stars, but they have that mentality that I'm grinding for this spot that I get, whether it's running back or wide receiver.
But it goes back to that point that we talked about, the development side of things, right? Because, we know you got great players, and we know we have all these great running backs, these great receivers, but hey, maybe they're just not as ready as we want them to be. Let's find a place to put them on the field. Devin Smith was one of the best gunners I ever seen in my life. And outside of being a great receiver, but he started off as a really good gunner. That's how he got on the field.
Right.
And, ultimately took advantage of his time where he was a receiver. But, I mean, the list goes on with guys who started on special teams, Terry McLaurin, Paris Camp. Like, the list goes on with these guys who started on special teams who ultimately finally got a chance to be developed and pushed into that starting role and took advantage of it.
Yeah, I forgot. Terry McLaurin was so good on special teams. That's a good shout out there. Beanie, when you went to the Arizona Cardinals, was there ever that pass pro thing where they told you as a freshman, as a rookie at the NFL level, that you better be ready to protect your guy?
Absolutely. I had Kurt Warner as my quarterback.
That's right.
Old Asian Kurt Warner at that. So, there were times where I may have missed a block and got Kurt demoralized on the football field, and I was out of there. And, that's something that I learned earlier on. If you can't protect the quarterback, you can't be out there, because at the National Football League level, the quarterback is your highest paid guy, one of the most important pieces on your football team. So you have to take that responsibility with a little bit more seriousness than other guys at other positions, because, you're responsible for a whole lot. You're talking about the franchise guy right there. You got to protect not just the offensive line, worried about him, But you have to know what you're doing. That's the more important thing.
Yeah, so our Buckeye Basement Solution is a lot of James Peoples, a little CJ Donaldson, and we're going to sprinkle in some Bo Jackson, right? We want a little bit of Bo Jacksonville. That's our solution. If you have an issue with your basement, I'm talking waterproofing, leaks, crack repair, they've got you covered at Buckeye Basement Solution. Get on BuckeyeBasementSolutions.com or give them a call at 614-956-4592. Coming up next on The Script, the podcast on the Ohio State Buckeyes, we're talking Browns and Bengals season over-unders, a little NFL football coming up next. Welcome back to The Script, the podcast on the Ohio State Buckeyes. Follow us on all social media handles at The Script OSU. Subscribe to us on YouTube, Apple Pod, and follow us on Spotify. All right, our friends from Prime Sportsbook Ohio are here with some over-under lines for the NFL season. We're going to go with the Bengals and Browns in just a minute. But if you're not playing yet, Beanie, Prime Sportsbook is doing something with the juice that most guys would dare to do.
Yes, they don't take that 10, 12, some 15%. They only take 8%. So that means more money in your pocket when you win on this thing here. So Prime Sports, you got to love them just because of that reason alone.
And I know Cardale's a big fan of the fact that you actually have real people, Cardale, real live people. Who knew that's a thing in 2025?
No, that's a differentiator right there because I hate when I have an issue with my sports betting accounts and I got to deal with AI or I'm dealing with a text back and forth and I'm getting a message. 45 minutes later, I'm calling, dealing with real people in real time.
Yeah, I love real people. AI is fine, but I like OG AI, real intelligence, right? The original. So let's go over under here on the Browns and Bengals. We're not going to go through all 17 games. We're not going to bore you with that. But the Bengals over under is 9.5. 9.5. Here's the schedule real quick. At the Browns, home against the Jags.
Losing that one.
At the Vikings, at the Broncos, home to the Lions. That's a brutal stretch right there. At Green Bay, home to the... Now, this is where it gets real easy. Home Steelers, home Jets, home Bears. That's a nice little run. Then they get the bye. They're at the Steelers, home to the Pats, at the Ravens, at the Bills, home to the Ravens, at the Dolphins, and then home games finishes up fairly easy, home against Arizona and Cleveland. So, Cardale, 9.5. It's a good number. I've gone through this for about 20 minutes to figure out where I am. What's your gut say? Over, under 9.5?
This one is tough. I mean, the schedule looks great.
It is. It's a gettable schedule.
It is. But I just hate that they didn't put more emphasis on the defensive side of the ball this year. It sounds like they're going for another shootout this year, trying to outscore everybody.
Yes.
But with that schedule, I think they can outscore a lot of those teams.
Okay.
So I'm taking it over.
Okay, so I am going with a slight over. I'm thinking 10-7, but I'm with Cardale, where when you look at that team last year, first off, they got to start faster. I mean, every year the Bengals come out of the gate 1-4, and their offense is probably top 3. They put all their money in Joe, Jamar, and T, but there's no investment on the defensive side, Beanie. And that does worry me in the AFC North. You know, December football, you're trying to win 41-38.
Yeah, that's tough. I mean, is it Henderson? Is that
Yeah,
what they're
let them
figuring out the
say,
situation for? I mean, they got to get that under control. One of their best defensive players. They need to get him signed in camp on time and everything. But nonetheless, I mean, when you look at the offense that they have, I think they will be able to outscore people. And the mere fact of how bad they were last year as a whole and how many games they lost and how good they were on the offensive end was head-scratching. Because there wouldn't have been any stat out there that would have told me if you would have said they had high offensive efficiency numbers and they would have won how many games they won last year. I mean, it would have been that bad. It wouldn't have told me that metric would have lined up. So this year, I got to say, they'll be a little bit better on defense. The offense is going to be status quo. They'll win more than 9.5 games.
Yeah, so we're all going to go over there. Joe Burrow played at an MVP level last year, but he had no help on the defensive side of the ball. All right, let's do this. We got 3 guys here from Northeast Ohio.
My Brownies.
Cleveland Browns, over under 5.5. That's tied for the lowest number in the NFL.
So disrespectful.
Well, I think it's accurate. So we're gonna go through it. All right, so you got home Bengals, at the Ravens, home Packers, at the Lions, yuck. Home Vikings, at the Steelers, now Aaron Rodgers, home Dolphins, at the Pats, you get the bye. At the Jets is gettable. Home to the Ravens. At Vegas is gettable. Home to the Niners, sorry. Home to the Titans, you get Cam Ward year 1. At the Bears, a lot of turnover there. Home to the Bills. Home to the Steelers. At the Bengals. My gut says this number is very accurate. Now, I look at this schedule through my orange and brown glasses, and I want to talk myself into over 5.5. I can't do it.
Oh my gosh, come on.
I'm gonna take the under.
The disrespect, Dave. Come on.
The realism, Beanie. I'm taking the under. You're gonna take him over at like 11.5 because you can't help yourself.
I'm not gonna go 11.5, but you just rattled off the games. I counted about at least 7.
That's a true Browns fan.
That I believe the Browns can win.
So we're close.
Yeah, at least 7. I mean, but come on, man.
I took 6 because of the situation. One, I think they're still got to figure out some things on the offense side of the ball, starting with the quarterback position. But I think this defense is still elite defense. Okay. I think this defense is more than good enough to win 6 of these games. And I think the deciding factor of that, outside of having a guy named Myles Garrett, that you got to account for, is the young quarterbacks they're going to face. And it's going to be the uncertainty of offense they're going to face with potentially the Jets and a new quarterback, or Justin Fields. Love Justin Fields to death. But with the new whole system, and then Aaron Rodgers with new system, I'm not saying they're going to sweep those guys. But then you got 2 rookie quarterbacks as well that they're facing, and quarterback deal with some injuries, and you got a quarterback going into his second year with his second system with the Bears. But I know JT going to have Caleb Williams ready to go.
This is true.
So I have that in those factors, not saying that the Browns offense isn't going to show up each and every week, but we know one thing for sure. They pack their defense each and every week, and Jim Schwartz have that team rolling.
Yeah, okay, so you got J.J. McCarthy, like you said. He's essentially a rookie. You're going to get him in Minnesota. You get Cam Ward in year 1. You get Caleb Williams in year 2. I see that. I can see Cardale's point there.
So I got 6, though. I'm right. I'm at the 5.5. I think the 5.5 is the most realistic one on here.
Yeah, get in there, Beanie.
New England Patriots.
Drake May. Drake May in year 2.
They got a bunch of rookie quarterbacks. And then one thing you got to look at is, even though we're talking about the Browns here, we talk about division rivals. Those games could go either way.
Exactly.
That's why I'm not having them.
Exactly. That's why I'm not having them beating the Steelers 2 times. Right. I don't. You never know. I mean, they play Cincinnati. They play the Ravens. They played them so well, and then the following week the Ravens will put 60 up on somebody.
Well, I'll say that I saw the New York Post report that said that Deshaun Watson has taken Shedeur Sanders under his wing. And if that doesn't inspire confidence in me, I don't know what does. So let's talk about the quarterback situation with the Brownies. It's a bit of a mess. Deshaun Watson, we know, is hurt. Joe Flacco was brought in once again. You have Shedeur Sanders, who was taken after Dylan Gabriel, but gets way more hype because he's Shedeur Sanders. So, Cardale, you're my quarterback guy. Shedeur Sanders, give us something to click on social. Just say his name, and we're about to get some clicks. So what do you think of Shedeur in this whole thing?
You know what? I think with all the reports that's been coming out through Browns, OTAs, and minicamp is very impressive and encouraging for his future and his development with the Cleveland Browns. Now, we do know the Browns having 5 quarterbacks on the roster. I don't think they're going to carry 5 during the season, so you're trying to figure out who's that odd man out. I think at this point, if I'm the Browns, I'm trying to figure out who's my young guy for the future.
Yeah.
I think they have wrote Deshaun Watson off. I think Flacco is there clearly for the moral support as an older guy, as a guy that's he's gonna have his basement is not going to be as low as these other guys. So he's going to be put in these situations and say, hey, don't go lose this game for us. Even though we know Flacco go out there like a gunslinger sometimes and throw the ball all over the field.
He's throwing touchdowns each way.
Exactly. Right. So I think they're in a position to see who's going to be the next up and coming young guy that they can hang their hats on, or potentially just get through the season and try to get one of these young guys coming out next year with Arch Mannings and Carson Beck's that's coming out next year, and then Urban Meyer is coming out next year, and a lot of guys like that. So they're in a unique situation. I understand why the over-under is 5.5, but I think this defense gets them at least 6 wins on the season.
All right, so both of them are going over. I'm the only guy who's actually watched Cleveland Browns football the last 30 years. I'm going to take the under. Reminder, if you want to get playing on Prime Sportsbook Ohio, we have a special offer for you. Use our code word SCRIPT. They'll give you a 100% deposit match up to $500. That's our promo code SCRIPT. Must be 21 and over to play. If you think you have a gambling problem, please call 1-800-GAMBLER. Odds subject to change. That'll do it for us here on The Script, the podcast on the Ohio State Buckeyes. I felt refreshed off the bye week, but think we can go the rest of July. I want to stack some games. We need rep.
Absolutely.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure, man. Bye week, man. It was good.
We'll see you back here next Wednesday on The Script.